between hard things and tragedy.
I don't believe in Jesus, but I'll start.
I have to cut the bullshit, and let's get real.
Is this being recorded?
Yes.
Welcome to Loving Kindness Every Day, where you will hear everyday language such as 4-letter, 5-letter, or words that your mother might call profanity. Please be advised.
I kind of felt like I was going to give up a little bit. Like, just a little bit. Like, just a little bit. Like, I have to be honest with you, okay? I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to tell you, like, a little bit, I felt like I was going to give up. And that was after my road trip. And I had this amazing road trip experience that I'm going to tell you guys about. I think that it's important always to understand where the message is coming from. And since we're just getting to know each other, you should understand that me doing this podcast is this is me seeking ye first the kingdom. You know, this is my ministry. This is it's a living sacrifice for me because of who I am and because of my story and because of the things that I'm telling you guys are so vulnerable and personal, and the stories that I tell and the discussions that we're having are so vulnerable and personal. You know, it's me learning. It's me going through this. I don't know when I'll put this out. I don't know where in the time stack you'll find this really, but right now you find me at it was 12:37 on Thursday, March 28th.
$25,000. I told him what the need was, and he said, I have $25,000 for you. Will that help? And I was like, yes.
Hi, my name
Amazing.
is Pam, and I just want to say that when things get tough, pray. Pray for guidance to give you inspiration to move on.
It came right at the right time, right when we needed it. He said, it looks like you guys aren't done, but you're close, and you might need help.
I think yesterday, March 27th.
$25,000. I told him what the need was, and he said, I have $25,000.
I kind of had this moment where I said, you know, I said, maybe I'm taking on too much with the podcast. You know, I have a retail store. I have a very successful marketing and online reputation company. You know, like, I have a lot going on. You know, my job is to help businesses get better, to help other people, you know, get better, you know, professionally. You know, I do that very successfully. But, you know, and also, you know, my own brand, my retail store, you know, and that's like, it's 2 full-time jobs, you know what I mean? And then to podcasting, which has taken on a whole life of its own as, dare I say, a all-encompassing life mission. You know, I just said to the Spirit, like, how can I land? You know, how am I as God made visible? I recognize my infinite potential, so I don't want to say I am only one man. You know, I don't believe that. I am you, I am me, I am everyone. We are all the same. We are here together, ultimately, as one voice, speaking together, love. While I was recording over the road trip, you know, I kept affirming. I was affirming positive things about the podcast, and as I mentioned, thinking of giving up. And then I went to eat, really feeling defeated. And I went across the street to this delicious bakery that I ordered a veggie quiche and a chocolate croissant, and I ate my veggie quiche there because I said, you know what, I'm just going to take a moment and breathe, and I'm going to just enjoy it. And I sat there, and the seating was awkward because there was a lot of, like, pink boxes everywhere. And I sat down, and then I heard this gentleman, and he has this big booming voice. And I felt like I was part of his conversation, you know, eating it, and I'm hearing this guy in the background, and he's like, oh, you know. And I'm like, okay. then he says something about Asheville. And then I look down at my cup and I have this sticker of Asheville, and I'm thinking, and I had been kind of back and forth in my mind thinking about V, and, thinking about maybe going back to Asheville and hanging out there a while, and some people who had been contacting me, asking me to, meet up with them and things like that in Asheville. And I thought it was interesting, that he talked about Asheville. And then I hear him saying something like, oh, the secret place and some secret place. And I started thinking about, Psalms 91 and the secret place of the Most High. And then I started really being prompted by the Spirit, like, you should go ask him about the Asheville thing. Like, you should go ask him. Like, it really was sticking into my mind about the Asheville thing and something about being a vegan. And then some other girl, and then I kind of like dismissed the thought. I thought, no, I'm not going to talk to this guy, maybe not, but maybe I will. I don't know. I'm in one of those moods. Sure, why not? And then some other person walks in the door, and then they say something like secret place. They say it again. And I keep thinking about my TikTok, and I'm thinking about the secret place videos that I did, and it just kind of came to me at once. And I was like, I'm going to say something to this guy. So I walk up to him, and I'm standing there, and there's another gentleman across the way from him. He's got like this bright white hair, and he looks at me because he sees me standing there, but the gentleman who's speaking with the big voice, he doesn't notice me just yet, even though I'm standing closer to him. He's sitting down and he's looking at the guy with the bright white hair. And so the guy with the bright white hair kind of like nods at me, looks in my direction, and so then the guy with the big voice looks at me and he's like, oh, hey, yeah. And I was like, hey, I couldn't help but overhear, you saying something else. And so then when they said, you couldn't help but overhear, they all sort of like reacted to that, saying, oh, yeah, obviously, because if his voice is so loud and so, et cetera. And then, I kind of I said back to him, I said, well, you definitely don't have a problem, like, projecting your voice. And the guy with the bright white hair goes, oh, he said something like, and he used the word kindness, and he said something like, oh, what you said, like you've done him a kindness or something like that, like with the way that you said that. And it touched me because I was like, well, that's nice, I was like, he doesn't even know me. I'm like, that's my name. So I'm glad that you feel that way, like, and so I think I actually said that to him. I was like, well, that's my name. I'm glad you feel that way. But we ended up talking, and so the guy with the big voice, his name is Matt, and he tells me that his name is Matt, and that he literally last night won a podcast award. And it was funny because I had been, like I said, affirming, about the podcast, and I was like, oh, of course, that's why, the Spirit has me come and talk to you. I was like, you need to rub that on me. And I told him, I was like, rub that success on me. Just go and rub it on me. I was like, I got that. I was like, I got that one next year. I was like, I got you next year. And he rubbed it on me, and I was like, yep. Thank you, success. And then he goes, well, we started talking, and then I was saying to him, whatever. He was asking me about the podcast. I was telling him about the podcast, and he says, well, you really need to go talk to the guy outside. He's the person that, you really need to know. And he says his name to me, and I was like, well, I don't know that name. No, I don't know who that is. And he's like, well, he's right outside in the red shirt. You need to go. That's who you need to go talk to. And I was like, all right, well, let's go. So as I'm going outside, thinking, all right, well, here we go. I walk up to the gate to like get outside to the area where they're sitting, and I hear the gentleman with the red shirt say Waldorf School, and.
So yeah, we talked about this with Malcolm Gladwell and the whole thing that happened in that super long intro during season 1. Yeah, we already talked about that. So we're gonna go straight to Asheville, and this is a big shout out to some of my friends in Asheville and people that I love there that have homes there, and this is for them.
I'm in for the night, but I have one hive there, and then one hive that's a Turkish style at the end of the barn. What's Turkish style? It's a log hive. I can show you. It's one of my most favorite forms of beekeeping is in Turkey. These guys have their winter jackets on. It'll come out around May Day, and they're mostly going in. So they're.
Oh, what's the amethyst for? It's an amethyst, isn't it?
Yes. These are all just meaningful to me. Gifts from people, and let's see. I'll make sure nobody fell in the water. And like bricks from my grandparents' farm, stuff that I'm aware of. And just as kind of an offering. Since they have to get water, they might as well get water from something that's, meaningful, where the prayers I can keep alive more for them.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I'll show you just down here.
You know, this thing happened this morning, and I totally forgot about it until just now, and I feel like it's this little, like, nugget from the universe. So don't tell me, but you were coming from Miami, weren't you?
Yeah, I was down, all the way down there, yeah.
I thought so, because I met a woman this morning, at the Biscuit Head place, and when I saw her, she had the most beautiful hair. It almost reminded me of that lady with the hairdryer. I'm like, how much work is this woman putting in the hair? But it was so beautiful. It was like the sea. And I just had to tell her. I was like, oh, your hair is beautiful. And then when she looked at me, I could swear, like, she looked like Frida, like the famous like Mexican sort of look, but without like the unibrow. Like, she just looked like classic, like just beautiful. And I was like, whoa. And then I kind of had this conversation with these other ladies, and then I think she maybe heard part of it, and so then we kind of started talking. And tell me why she's on a road trip. She's also on a road trip. Also just came back from Miami. And here I am loving on her the way that you did with the other woman. And I said basically, like, I just felt like from the universe. And then I ended up kind of telling her, I just felt so compelled to say it. I was like, you're beautiful. Her name's Alexis. I was like, you're beautiful, Alexis. And don't let anybody treat you less than beautiful. And, like, I wanted to be like, you're una reina, because she's Mexican. We started talking in Spanish a little bit, because I was like, she's talking about Miami, da-da-da. And I was like, in this moment, when you told that story, I kind of felt like, it's hard to describe, but maybe like a little piece of like that constellation thing where I was like repping you in that moment, but also like the shadow of like the road trip thing. Because I even said to her, I was like, why do I keep meeting people who are just coming back from Miami? Like, I feel like I have to go to Miami now.
Season 1, yeah, we went to Miami. I went on a road trip to Miami and to Asheville that season.
I'd just come back from Turkey, and I just met my first. It was a refugee from Syria, because the war in Syria had just broken out. And I had been invited to help with this small group of people kind of brainstorm a school that didn't happen, actually, but it was a very interesting brainstorm. And the Syrian man was there, and he had escaped. He was of an age, he would have been conscripted into the army in ISIS, or snatching all the men up. He had a wife and 7 kids. He and his wife, they had fled. They had many generations of shoe factory that had gotten bombed. They had like some land outside the city. They left the city. Their house was bombed 2 hours later. And so he had to go through a minefield in the middle of the night to escape, because he decided, go to Turkey, earn some money, support us. That's what he did. Okay. So I'd met him, and I came home to the fire, and it was like, wow, there's a difference between hard things and tragedy. Mine was a hard thing. His was a tragedy.
My name's John Handleman, and I'm 44 years old. And I'm from Canada. And I had a middle-class upbringing. And didn't want for food or anything like this. And I went to university, and by the time I was in university, I went, I really don't want to do this life that everyone else is living, this kind of 9-to-5 life where you watch TV or go to bars after. And I thought, surely there's got to be something more to life than this. This is just, I don't want to do it. And I was kind of shocked that anyone else wanted to do it. And it led to me traveling for a long time. When I traveled as cheaply as I could because I didn't want to work. So I hitchhiked a lot, and I lived in my tent for a long time. And I lived with all types of people and all types of communities, because my dad gave me this gift of charisma and gab. And I was able to get people really to like me pretty quickly. And a lot of those people would feed me and take me on adventures and all this kind of stuff. So I'm using this gift of charisma and the safety I have as a man to hitchhike. I just did a lot of that when I was hitchhiking. I don't know the state of hitchhiking now, except that it seems like it's a lot less than it was when I did it. And I know that when I did it, it was already on the down. I remember being very, very, very rarely did I see other hitchhikers. And so I don't know what the state of it is now, but I loved it, and it was a great way to meet people, and it's just started expanding my mind on like what's possible in our human experience. Fast forwarding some time later,
And John, what year was that, would you say, that you were doing the hitchhiking?
I'm 44 now, and I started right after university, so 23.
I see, okay.
Yeah, and did that for years, and through a lot of different adventures, living on intentional communities, or with tribes, or working at this camp, or that camp, or this job, or that job, like just trying everything, talking to this one and that one. At some point, I started getting curious about my ancestry. I started going, what does it mean? I was raised Jewish, but we were raised as secular Jews, meaning we didn't do many religious practices. We did like a couple, but really we just had dinner together and went to synagogue like, I don't know, 3 times a year. And we didn't speak Hebrew. Like I'm one of the only people in my family, I think, who like can read Hebrew. You know, and we were always told, you know, support Israel, and we're Jewish, and it was confusing to me because I was like, I don't even know what this really means. I feel much more Canadian and westernized than Jewish, but there was always like a big pride in Jewish people, and I just started reading about it and thinking about it. And then whenever I'd find an answer, I was like, oh my goodness, this is where our tradition comes from. Some of the answers I read were just so against what we know now, and it seemed like it was just people clinging on to the past.
What answers were you finding?
Yeah, one was, I remember going like, I was like, what's Rosh Hashanah? And Rosh Hashanah is like the birth of it's the New Year. Yeah, it's our New Year's celebration in Judaism. And I was like, oh, what's that? And Rosh Hashanah, I was like, what year is it? I don't even know what year it is in the Jewish calendar. And I found out later that it was. I think at the time I read this, it was 5,767. My memory could be a little fuzzy, so I hope no listener really quotes me on the number. But when I read it, I went, why are we celebrating 5,700? What's that? When was Judaism created? And I was like, when I studied it, obviously no one knows for sure, but it seemed like Judaism was created 3,500 years ago when there was a guy who converted to Judaism because he believed God spoke to him. So I'm like, what's 5,777 or 67? I found out that's the legendary birth of Adam.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I thought, what is it? There was no Adam. I don't believe in Adam. What are we celebrating? That's crazy. And what I did was I went around to every Jewish person I knew and I went, hey, what year is it in the Jewish calendar? And I'd say 99.99% didn't know. And then I said, do you know what happened in year 0? Do you know what we're celebrating? And they said no. And I said, look how cut off we are, right?
Yeah.
So we don't even understand our New Year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and it's understandable because we're not really raised in the Jewish culture. We're raised in a westernized culture where Judaism tries to find ways to like survive and just kind of, I think, just adjust to capitalism and just becomes like a sales tactic. And so I got more curious about like what my people went through as people, emotionally, and physically. When I was looking for a career for myself, I'd been visiting America and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And someone told me I should be a life coach, and I started doing it, and I was very successful at it. And then a lot of people had trauma, and I was like, I should really study trauma. And I started studying trauma, and then came across the idea of ancestral trauma, meaning the pain your ancestors have lives inside of you somehow, and it's manifesting in some way. And that made a lot of sense to me. And I went, oh, yeah, okay. Because, for example, I'm balding right now, and I look at my dad, and he's bald. And I look at my grandfather, and he's bald. And I look at my brother, and he's bald. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's like in my mind, I'm like, oh, there's a genetic component in here. But then I wonder, who is the first of our line to go bald? Because in my view, balding isn't a symptom of old age, it's a symptom of poor health. Because there's a lot of older folks that don't go bald.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I remember when I was traveling, I remember particularly going to Mexico and going, man, a lot of the older folks here have black hair and they're not balding. And I was like, what's that about? What's going on?
You don't feel that's just like the process of like, for example, like Darwinism, that type of a thing, where you know it's like humans.
I don't know. It was, but it was notable to me.
Interesting.
I went, this guy's 70 and has hair. What's the evolutionary advantage of not having hair? I don't know. It doesn't seem to apply to women as much. What's going on with the men?
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
and it just got me thinking. And balding for men, it's a tough issue. It took me years to be able to talk frankly about it, like I am with you. So I bring it up in the hopes that also in this podcast someone could hear it and the shame will drop a little bit.
Wow.
But
that's really brave of you, and thank you for doing
yeah,
that.
I appreciate that.
Wow.
So, something to say is going, I don't, obviously, I don't know. I'm in belief land, right? Like, I don't know. But I wonder, I was like, if I go back far enough in my lineage, was there an old man with hair?
Oh, okay.
And my suspicion is yes.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, what causes baldness? And like a lot of people disagree with whatever causes baldness, but I'll just posit that stress and fear cause your hair to fall out. And I go, what type of stress and fear did my people go through? With Jews, the Jewish stories that I know are Jews kind of get established somewhere and then they get kicked out. They get established, then they get kicked out, and they get kicked out really violently. And then tracing that, like that, what it would look like now. I'm close with my dad. I love my dad, and he's very afraid of being poor. I hope if he hears this, he doesn't feel that I'm betraying his confidence by saying this. But it's true. He's really worried about being poor, and he has lots of money. I don't want to reveal how much money he has because that feels like maybe it would be too much. But he has a lot of money. He could not work for the next like many years and be totally fine.
Right.
And I mean lots of money. Like he could, and he still believes deep down that he's going to be poor. And I go, where's that from? That's because a lot of people around here get rich, and then they don't have that fear. Maybe some do, but he really has it. And I go, oh, I think that's our Jewish ancestral trauma. I think that's from making a living and then all of a sudden the government coming and beating the shit out of you and taking everything you have. And I go, so that's how it's living in him, that he just kind of hoards money. Right. And then I noticed it in me. I said, oh my God, I'm cheap. I was with a friend the other day and he said, you're the cheapest man I know. You're the most generous man I know because you give the most to charity, but you're the cheapest man I know, that if you look at you have very little material possessions and you won't go out to dinner. You're too like afraid to go out to dinner. And he's right, and I only give to charity as an effort to try to counteract this thing inside of me that I know is coming from this ancestral scarcity.
So then how do you heal?
I can't touch it yet. These are still like intellectual constructs. I've been working with a therapist actually to just try and get into that, to try and feel the fear rather than figure out all the strategies we've had to numb that fear, or to ignore that fear or to disassociate from our bodies. And that's like currently one of my, if not my main goal in life is to like fully feel my grief and my fear. Because one thing I've seen in my family, I mean, it's my impression, they might disagree, is we're not really able to grieve together. So I went to a while ago. I was dating a Chinese woman, okay, really lovely woman, and we were living in Portland for a bit. This is something like 8 or 9 years ago, and we passed a black church, and I had always wanted to go inside, but I was always very scared to. And I went with her. I said, hey, I feel a little more comfortable to go with you. Would you be willing to go with me? And she said, yeah, for sure. Come on. So we walked in, and it was so cool. Everyone was so happy that I went in. Every single person went, oh, we're so glad you're here. Thanks for coming. I was like, lovely. Cool. Thank you for saying that. I'm very scared right now, And as they went in, what I noticed was everyone was singing, laughing, or crying. Everyone was just so alive with emotion, and I had never seen that. I go to synagogue, and the synagogues I went to, everyone is very bored, let's say. No one sings with any passion. It's just kind of like a dull, what I've seen is a dull bunch of Jewish white people just kind of bored together. And when I went to this black church, I said, oh, these people are so alive. This is like the most compelling place I've ever been. I don't believe in Jesus, but I'll start. I'll start just to be part of it. Like, I don't even care. This is such a cool vibe. Crying and laughing and celebrating. It was the best party I ever went to. And it was just so beautiful. I was so touched. And I felt myself the emotion was coming inside me as church. And so then I went to a black funeral. I was lucky enough to get invited to, I don't know how to say it, but fortunate enough to and I went, and everyone was crying their brains out. Oh my God, I'd never seen people weeping. They were hysterical. And when I went to a Jewish funeral, I saw a couple of women crying sometimes. And I thought, oh my God, we don't know how to mourn. We don't know how to mourn together.
Or like
really mourn.
Like certain cultures I've noticed, or certain groups of people will make it seem like it's wrong for showing emotion. To show that. Like I for example, you speak about being at a funeral, that's mostly like brown-skinned people. I've been, as a child in that environment with, for example, my mother being like, oh, don't cry. We're not gonna, kind of, dare I say, I almost can explain to the opposite experience where it's not that everybody else wasn't crying, but it was like we were told, like my family, like my microculture was told, like, you don't act that way. And so I feel like it's almost like how you're saying, where it's like you were almost told that, but without it being so expressive. But you were trained that way. It's like, we don't act that way. This is what we do. And then
my suspicion for that, I don't, everyone's got a different story of why they're repressing the emotions. But one story I think about is, you get your my people are in, like, let's say, where would they be? I don't know, Poland or Romania or what. They're in a town and they establish and they get brutalized and they're crying and someone says, hey, stop, let's go. We don't have time for this shit.
Yeah, that.
We don't have time. We're on the move. Let's go. And it becomes a very real thing for them because it's, they don't. It's like, we got to get out of here. They're going to kill us unless we get out of here today. This is our deadline, to get out of here. We don't have time to mourn. And then while we're walking, we don't have time to cry. We have to find the next village and establish ourselves. So I just imagine, fuck, it's a real number, And then I haven't even brought up the Holocaust yet, which I imagine is like a level of terrifying that if you're going to survive it, you got to numb to a certain extent. And so for me, wondering, like, oh, how many tears are inside of me, and how do I touch those tears? Because if I don't, I'm going to drown in my own tears. Yeah. And then once you've learned to uncry, right? Like, because every kid knows how to cry just fine, right? Once you learn how not to cry, it's hard to relearn how to cry. That's been my experience. I've been on this journey now of how to cry for, I'd say, about diligently, I'd say about 7.5, 8 years. And it's a big one. It's hard. Like, I don't suspect we'll cry in this conversation. It's just really, really hard for me. It's still hard, and I feel it because then I look at my dad and go, geez, I've never really seen my dad cry. And then my mom told me how her tears were repressed too. Her mother used to tell her, hey, don't cry. You don't want to make me sad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But her mom came from Romania, and her mom couldn't afford shoes. Okay? And her mom was living in a place where, the Jews were really poorly treated. There were pogroms, meaning systematic attacks of government terrorism, and they were oppressed. And there was just a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of racism towards the Jews. People talk about anti-Semitism today. Yeah. I wonder about that in the scope of America, where so many Jews and Irish people and all different versions of white people sort of blend together. You know? And I'm curious. I'm like, can people see my Jewishness? Is that like a thing? I don't think so, but maybe they can. You know? And so, in living in America, particularly in the South of America, I've wondered the versions of racism and how they are here. I came from Montreal, which is more of a rainbow type of city than where I live now. You know? But then I wonder in terms of like, yeah, I wonder about it. I know many Jews are like, no, people can see you're Jewish, and there's anti-Semitism everywhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't feel that way, but maybe it's true. I wonder, but I know back then, for my grandmother, it was. And so she had to emotionally repress too. And when you're growing up, I mean, and you can't afford shoes, and you know your people are on the verge of decisions, like what happens to your mind? What type of parent do you become when you're the target, right? And it's a question for like, right now the Palestinian people are going through, you know, I don't know what to call it, because no name seems like apt enough of the terror that's happening there. And I'm like, what's going to happen to these people when they become parents? Like, what's going to happen to their kids? These people are totally traumatized. Look what happened. They've been blown up all over the place. It's going to be, what are we going to do with that? We're going to have a bunch of traumatized people. And I'm like, wait a minute, we already have a bunch of traumatized people. And it's like we're just building this trauma on trauma on trauma on trauma, and not acknowledging that our culture just doesn't work. It just creates a lot of pain in humans, and they don't know what to do with this pain.
Yeah.
And so they buy shit, or they take drugs.
Yeah.
Or they numb out, or
yeah. Honestly, yeah. Like, I know you're gonna know what to do.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel led to do for like
grounding,
bringing us here. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, let's just get comfortable. Oh. And just, I like to say, you know, find your breath. And just notice your body. Noticing if there's any tension in your body, any places where you're holding tight or restricted. Just seeing if you can soften, relax, release. Becoming a little more spacious. And then on your next exhale, invite us to take a deep breath in. And holding it up at the top. And just letting go with a sigh. And we'll do 2 more. Drawing the breath up from the earth beneath, up through your core central channel, all the way up into your third eye. You can tap your third eye for a moment, holding your breath, squeezing, and letting out the sigh. Letting your belly get soft. And bringing 1 more big deep breath in. All the way up, filling you up with this chi, this life energy, all the way up to the very tippy top of your head. Getting a little tap up here. Letting out with a nice big sigh. Yeah, such a good way to arrive.
I love that. Thank you.
Next time, a journey in divine synchronicity.
Yeah. I've got a great group of friends. You know, we started a group. There's like 9 of us women that we're meeting once a month and to support each other. And this is a little offshoot of our group. We decided the 3 of us came to Jeju today.